The following is part 1 of a 2-part documentary. Follow along as men extract blocks of stone from a quarry using only hand tools. The stone is selected for its durability and heat retention, making it ideal for crafting traditional stone ovens. Each piece is shaped and prepared on site before being transported for oven construction. The village of Bell is located near Lake Lutscher in the municipality of Mendich. At the beginning of the 20th century, this community was still a center of Rhenish oven construction. The characteristic rock deposits in this district led to the development of a special stove building trade. Basalt and tuff were mainly used in house and road construction. The stove builders extracted the material from the quarries near Bell. Until the end of the 19th century, it was operated sporadically, mining underground, then only in open-cast mining. For the film documentation, it has been reopened after being closed for the past 20 years. The Levitt tuff, also called Beller oven stone, was formed from deposits of volcanic ash solidified with water. It stands in kettle-like fractures at a depth of 20 to 30 meters. The relatively easy-to-work-with yellowish-gray color stone has the special characteristic to store heat quickly and release it slowly, without expanding or cracking. This makes it particularly suitable for use in furnace construction. The kiln builders remove the tough rock from top to bottom. Before they can begin shaping a block, they must determine its size. In doing so, they were guided by the dimensions of the hearth and vault stones of the furnace, which they have in mind based on years of experience. They transfer these dimensions using a folding ruler and lathe. The edges of the block determined, one of the oven builders uses a pickaxe to cut a groove. The second stove builder cuts a flat throat on the block side. From this furrow, the stove builders later release the stone. Around 1900, there were still 20 oven building companies here. Due to the development of new types of furnaces, the decline of the industry began in the 1930s. Steel furnaces in particular were suitable for the use of new fuels such as coal, oil, and electrical energy. At the time of filming, they had all but abandoned the traditional natural stone ovens. To remove the tough block later, they punch holes along the lower boundary line at intervals of 5 to 10 centimeters. To wedge holes and for the blocking, they use the pointed pickaxe with 2 long extended and pointed tapered ends. In order to be able to separate the block horizontally from the rock, the stove builder must also clear the third side of the tough block. The oven builder removes the stone using the so-called wedge method. With light blows, he sets iron wedges with the sharpened head in the holes provided. The blacksmiths from the surrounding area made these approximately 20 centimeters long tapered wedges, along with the rest of the tools. So that the stone breaks off from the surface relatively smoothly, the wedges must be driven in carefully and little at a time. Only when the oven builders have pried the block free can they see how successful the excavation was. The sound of the rock reveals whether there are cracks. So-called stitches are hidden in the block. Only now is it decided whether the stove builders can process the stone as a whole or only piece by piece. Possible cracks in the material mean that only the frost-free zone is suitable for stone extraction, or as the stove builders say, open weather. Cracks filled with ice cannot be identified by the sound of the material. The processed stones would break apart after thawing. As soon as the oven builders lifted the block with the iron bar and have supported it by placing a stone underneath, they can remove wedges permanently. Unlike what can be seen here, the extraction of smaller blocks of stone was usually carried out by a single craftsman. With the help of 2 wooden rollers, the oven builders can move the stone, which weighs around 70 kilograms. The slower the block slides over the sloping side of the base, the lower the risk it will break. Exposed tough rock is particularly full of cracks. Larger tough blocks could therefore only be found in the lower rock layers. In order to mine a particularly large block, the oven builders enlisted help from other craftsmen. This tough block, which weighs several hundredweight, is being mined again using the wedge method. Placing a piece of wood underneath increases the leverage of the iron bars. In order to be able to remove the stone from the wall, bars are used in the rear split channel. They prevent the block from slipping back by placing pieces of wood between the stone and the wall. Until the oven builders were founded in the 1930s, the trade had no organized vocational training. After the introduction of an apprenticeship, the trade was learned either in the family business or completed training with a local oven builder. Where the broken block was located, the cracking effect of the wedges is clearly visible. In 1976, there were still 4 furnace construction companies in Bell, whose masters are skilled in stone extraction and processing by hand. Only when the last tough block lies at the bottom of the quarry have the oven builders finished their work here. They can now start cutting and shaping the tough blocks. With the help of the wooden mining crane, the kiln builder placed the stones at the upper edge of the quarry. At the lay-in hut, they will now work on the uncut stone blocks and turn them into kiln brick blanks. They must be placed according to their position in the oven furnace. With a wooden pole, the stove builders pull the block over the edge of the quarry onto the forecourt of the hut. Since the block rotates on the winch rope due to its weight, retrieving and lowering requires a lot of skill and caution. It takes around 14 days for the extraction of the tough stone blocks and the preparation of the blanks. A stove builder needs approximately 100 oven bricks for a stove. The mining crane, which is installed at the upper edge of the quarry, dates back to around 1920. Until the mid-1950s, it was used by oven builders for work in the quarry. For the documentation of the oven building trade, it is once again in use. Some of the tough blocks weigh more than 1 ton. Several men are needed to transport them from the mine crane to the hut. The Beller oven builders built their ovens mainly in the Rhineland. Each of them usually had their agreed sales area. Most stove builders worked as independent masters, while a few were employed by foreign companies. Because stove builders from Bell also settled in larger cities, the so-called ball ovens spread both at home and abroad. The oven builders usually chipped the blanks in the spring to keep them in stock if needed. With a wooden frame jig, they draw the size of the future stoveplate. With a special tool for precise surface finishing, the stove builder cuts a split groove along the line. Meanwhile, the second kiln builder dismantles another block using the splitting wedges. He extracts tough pieces to make the vault stones of the oven. By tapping with the whetstone, he checks whether there are any cavities in the stone, which are filled with natural deposits. If such stitches are present, the stone rattles, as the stove builders say. According to the course of the stitches, the stone is dismantled. A lot of experience is needed to set the dividing lines precisely. Before surface treatment, the sides of the panels must be smoothed. The oven builders process the tough stone blanks in front of the hut in various sizes and shapes. This determines where the stones will be later placed. The preparation of the tough blocks by hand with a wickerwork and whetstone had already given way to the use of modern machines in the 1950s. The training of the stove builder included not only the dismantling, but also the processing of the tough blocks. For the documentary, the men demonstrate the old techniques once again. Since the sharp sides of the braid wear out quickly, they have to be sanded again and again. For this purpose, a sandstone grinding block near the hut is fixed. On the sides of the block, the intended upper edge of the plate is marked. With a sharpening head and a hammer, the stove builder cuts the surface with vertical blows to the marked depth. The head of the crodle consists of several flat iron pins of different lengths and tapered tips. This tool is suitable for rough machining of larger stone surfaces. Since the rock is processed directly after extraction in the quarry, it retains its natural moisture. It is still green, as the stove builders say, which is now less brittle than in dry condition, and it is easier to shape. The unevenness on the underside of the plate is removed. While the stones are stored, they dry and lose weight. The customers who commissioned the ovens paid for the material piece by piece. In addition, the stove builders received food and accommodation during the construction of the stove, which lasted on average 1 week. When dismantling the tough blocks, the stove builders first remove the largest stove components to work out the hot plates. Using 2 slats, you draw the lateral boundaries of the new one, up to 10 centimeters wide. For orientation, one of the slats is inserted into the lower limit groove. The width of the slat corresponds to the thickness of the hot plate. To separate the tough slab, a limiting groove is first cut into the block. To ensure that the groove is as deep as possible, the stove builder applies the blows with the pointed tip at an angle. Only in this way can he achieve the necessary depth of the split groove. When setting up the oven, the stove builders add several hearths to form a baking surface. Before the stove builder separates the plate from the block with targeted blows, he stacks stones on top of each other, which catch the fall of the plate. Since the stone has the property of cracking at the weakest point, the plate comes off with a vertical crack from above. The processing of the broken rock blocks has changed fundamentally since the 1950s. The blanks are placed in the nearby stonework shops and there, with the stone saws, cut into slices. The stone processing completed by smoothing the surfaces and edges of the tough stone blanks. Short, diagonal strokes with the braid remove the last unevenness. The oven stones are selected according to their place in the furnace vault. The stove builders make keystone, spire stone, vaulted ceiling, and stovetops. In order to build the ordered ovens in various locations, they traveled during the summer months as traders in the Rhineland and the surrounding areas. They transported the stones separately by train or truck to the furnace construction sites. End of Part 1. See Part 2 when the oven is assembled.